Hello? Hello? Hi, this is Darren. I'm going to offer my own opinions on how to refactor the welcome controller in the new KC Root website. I'm going to pretend like this is a website I've never seen before, and I'm going to refactor it to make it what I'll call production ready. Um, I take testing pretty seriously, so that's actually the angle I'm going to take at it. So I'm going to look at this as a untested Rails app, and I'm going to do everything I would normally do to make it a tested app and to improve this portion of the website. Okay, so the first thing we should do is look at the code. Looks like there's one main action on it, and it makes 3 web calls to Meetup to pull up various data. And it looks like there's some duplicated code. I see an API key, which we'll look up too. And that's about it. So how would we make this better? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is to check out that API key. Use grep to see if it's actually used, because I don't think it's actually used anywhere. So let's go ahead and take it out. Okay, we fixed it. Correct. So the next thing is to get tests running. So I saw this class had a test, and all this test does is call the index page. It'll actually make a web call or fake web call to localhost and run the index action, and it'll just assert that a successful response came back. I don't consider that to be a legitimate test because let's just look at our controller. It does a lot more than just return nothing. So I want to test the code that actually exists. So to start, I'm going to delete all the other tests because those were all just stubbed out Rails tests. They didn't actually do anything. I'm going to make a spec directory, and I'm just going to get tests running. So the first thing I usually start is with some kind of spec helper. I'm going to use Minitest, and to set up, I'm just going to require these two. That's all you really need. And if I'm going to test my Rails code, they don't tell you this, but if you want to actually run the code in the Rails environment, all you need to do is include the environment file. So let's do that. Let's now create the first test. I like a test structure that maps my production code. So in the same way that I have an app folder, I'm going to have an app folder in my test. I'm going to test the welcome controller. So let's say I've got controllers and then welcome controller here. Let's hit match. And let's get the spec helper file included. Say describe welcome controller. And let's just start and just say it should exist. Say true must equal true. I just want to get the test running, and I just want to have some kind of verification that the assertions are running. I'm using a little tool that I wrote called Starting Blocks, which will run my test for me automatically, looking for basic conventions like spec and test and that sort of thing. So that worked. Just make sure it actually tested something. And it did. So great. Just to throw this out, that because I included an environment, the tests are running a little slow because they're actually starting up the Rails environment. which is fine with me for now. So say setup for tests. Okay. All right, let's get going. So let's see what this welcome controller does. I already saw that it did those. It had one action and it has these methods on it. So since I'm gonna, before I can really refactor this controller, I've got to test. I need to have some tests around it so I know that I don't mess something up. I know this might sound crazy, but I'm going to start by tearing out the code and then bringing it back in, but bringing it back in with tests. Again. And I'll need to run my T thing. So let's get down to some tests. I'm going to drop that thing. Let's say describe the index action. So what do I want to test first for? I'm going to test that whatever data that meetup thing does is returned. It's set to as an instance variable. What that really means, though, as far as we're concerned, is that the meetup data was passed to the view. So I'm going to actually test for that. The index action should pass the meetup data to the view. Okay. What does that mean exactly? Well, it looks like we run this JSON parse on this meetup method, and the meetup method makes a web call out, and it returns the body of the web request. Now, let's think about this. It's actually making a web call. I could actually mock this whole thing through. So I can mock the URI, I can mock the, each of these object by object. But the difficult problem is this right here, is to mock this block. So I'm going to go a different route, and I'm going to consider using a web mocking library. And I haven't done this in a while, so let's see what's available. I heavily rely on this website called the Ruby Toolbox because it shows you all the gems that are available to you and even ranks them by popularity. So let's look up mocking. Mocking, oh look, that's perfect, mocking web requests. Oh yeah, webmock. So webmock allows stubbing HTTP requests and setting expectations. Perfect. Let's check them out. I think I've used this before, so let's find some code. Looks like they've got some mini test plugin, which is perfect. Looks like I include this stubbing, so it lets me stub a request, and then once I stub it, then I can actually make it using the code, and it'll fake it, but it'll report a success. Then I can stub requests with different bodies and headers. That's pretty nice. Regex expressions, don't care about that. The main thing I think we want to make sure is that I can get the data back. And I can. So I can say stub request with whatever to return body. So I think using this, I can actually fake this web call that's being made to this big URL and then verify that that data gets returned to the view. Let's go and set this up. Keep that link in my clipboard because I'll be hopping right back there. Let's see, for setup, I want to do gem install webmock. Do that in my gem file. Bottom webmock group development test. Okay. I saw there's a mini test block here. So webmock mini tests. go to my spec helper and I'll include it down here. A mock mini test. Let's go back to that code that I was looking for. And let's see if there's multiple examples. Perfect. So stubbing with a custom response. So here you can stub a web call, and then you can have it return the specific body and status and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and fake that. Use that. Oh. Okay, we've got a big URL here. So let's copy it in here. So any request to this URL should return this. And I am going to, but I was like, I'm just going to, all I care about really is the data, the body that was returned. So return body ABC. Yeah, let's just stick with that. And then let's instantiate a controller. Now I love to do this because then I can just have it instantiated in one place. So controller.index. When I do that, then the body should equal meetup. You know, the meetup should equal the data. Oh, and look, there's a JSON parse on it. So how about I pass it some data, like it could be a B to JSON. That'll convert it to a single string, and then I'm going to verify that the parse data comes back out. So here's the stub. Then I call the action. After the action's called, it should be able to pull out the meetup data, and it must equal a B. Sound good? I'm kind of having to do this little funny thing where I'm taking the data, then I'm converting it to JSON just to verify that this is set to the JSON result. But I think that works for me. See what the test says. Undefined method index. So the tests are going to start driving what I bring back. I brought back the index action, and now let's see what it does. So now it wants to see that we actually got these results in here. So let's go ahead and do this, but let's just make our test pass first. We can kind of verify that it works. All right, so I've got some hard-coded data, and that passed the test. Made some good progress, so let's go ahead and check in. Say starting to bring back the meetup code or welcome controller code. Okay, so of course this is wrong, so we need to make it so it is not hard-coded data. And there's a number of ways of doing this, but in this situation, I'm going to try just using more examples. Examples. I'm a big proponent of TDD, and the thing with TDD is just to make the test pass as simple as possible, and returning the exact data will do that. If I want to make this work even better, let's just get rid of that for now. I just want more tests. More tests will make me remove my hard-coded examples. So let's just bring this in here like that. Each example. Okay, so here I've wrapped these tests in a loop. I'm just going to assert that whatever example I have here that I stubbed through the web call comes back out. And let me get my test running again. Okay, the test still passes. So let's bring in a different example. See, now I have a failure, so I better make that pass. So that code obviously won't work. Let's go ahead and bring back what we had. That's going to tell me what to do step by step. It says, oh, you need a meetup method. Oh, look at this. I think I have one here. I'll go ahead and just bring this code straight out and see what happens. Hopefully the webmock stuff works. And it does. A cool thing about webmock is if you try to run a test through it, or a web call that's not faked, so here I'm going to replace it with a call to Google. Webmock won't actually make the web call. So you'd think normally here it would actually make the call to Google in your test. Now, when you include webmock, it stops all outgoing web traffic, and it'll throw an exception if you make a web request that's not stubbed. If you do that too, it'll actually return you the Ruby code that you could use to stub the call that you just made. So if you want to quickly get into some code that's making a bunch of API calls, you can just include webmock, and it will put this blanket protection over you, and then you can stub the methods one by one, and then get your code under test. So I've done that. So I actually have tested code here. Let's code. Remove the hard-coded stuff by adding more tests. Okay. It looks like we have two more things that work the exact same way. Now, I think these tests are actually going to go away in the near future. I'm guessing on that. So, in the same way that I passed in multiple examples here, I can actually have multiple examples testing for different values. I'm thinking if I should do that, though. Never mind, I don't think I'll do that. Just go back to this. So let's just go ahead and do things. So I say it should pass the meetup data to the view. Let's just copy that. Oops. Let me describe block 2. Okay, it should pass the meetup. Sorry, which one was it again? It was the member data. Okay, so it should pass the meetup member data to the view. And this one is members, and the URL is different. So let's copy that hard-coded thing. And I think that should be fine. Since we're not really asserting the data that's returned, we're just asserting that whatever was passed by this URL will be returned. That's pretty clean to me. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, even though I haven't done anything, it's failing, and it's failing because it's running the other code. So it looks like I'm going to have to stub every web call that comes out of this controller, and I have to do this before I can even make any production code changes. So in a before filter here, not a before filter, but a before action, I'm just going to stub these calls. Just actually. Yeah, so make sure I get the URL correct. And I'm just going to default to return. I like to have this here. To return body. Actually, let's just see if we can get by with just stubbing the call. No, it's going to return nil, which the JSON parse doesn't like. So I'm going to say to return body and then just an empty string. Let's see how it likes that. Okay, control lights. Doesn't like that either, so let's just try this. All right. Just to be explicit, let's make sure we know that that's what that is for. I've returned some sort of valid JSON in order for the JSON parse to work for the first call. So now I've got to open line for the second call. So let's make that pass. By just uncommenting the code. Okay, so that I think made those other tests pass, but now I've got to, I've got to stub both of these web calls. Okay, so I got all that code passing. Let's go ahead and quickly do the same for the other method. What was that again? Already. This one is the meetup pass total. What does that mean? Meetup pass total. Well, I don't know what that means, but I can still test for it. Okay, so the URL should be okay. Get pass total. Let's let that test run. So we fail. I'm going to do the simplest code that I can. Actually, it's done for me. Getting same stubbing issue. All right. So I have, if I'm not mistaken, I have now tested that all of this code works. So let's go and check in before we do anything else. And web calls under test. Let's look at my web. Let's look at those tests again. Welcome for spec. I think these tests should be cleaned up just a little bit. I think I don't need to copy that describe block. Describe multiple examples. I think that should cover the whole thing because that's what it does. By the way, if you do this in mini tests, you have to wrap a describe block. You can't wrap it statements, or you can, but I think you'll get slightly different behavior than you'll probably expect. So, say we cleaned up. Let's run the test, of course. Okay, pass. The test. Okay. Now let's refactor the web code. I totally agree with Brian on his approach to the meetup client. But because this code's under test, I can safely move it around and I don't have to worry about breaking anything. So let's say meetup client. I'm going to take Brian's name. I'll go meetup client. Let's just make methods to get this data. So meetup. I'm just going to make it members. Meetup. I don't know what this code actually does, so I'm afraid to change the names. Members meetup. What am I going to call this? Let's look at what this actually returns. So this is the welcome index, so I should be able to look up welcome index HTML. I can look at the data and I can see what is being used. So I see meetup members, I see meetup pass total, meetup pass total, meetup pass total. I don't know if that's actually being used. Is there a render partial in here? This calendar HTML. Yep. Oh, there we go. This looks like it is the, well, calendar. So I'm just going to stick with that for now. Let's go back to the meetup client. And we're going to call this calendar. So we have the meetup client, which returns members. It returns calendar. Yeah, we're going to keep it calendar for now. And the past total. And I'm not sure what that is either, but we'll find out. Again, because this code is tested, I can move it. So let's move the meetup past total here. Are we accessing params anywhere? Well, I guess we'll find out. Meetup, that moves into calendar. Now let's move this into here. Oh, yeah, let's do this too. JSON parse. Let's bring that into the client we wrote. Should be able to now say meetup client.calendar. Meetup client, what was it? Members and meetup client pass total. Good. Sounds good to me. a mistake. These should be class level methods, not instance. I'm not saying meetup client.new. Maybe I should. I don't know right now. So I've gotten this data at least out of the view of the gotten that meetup specific stuff out of the controller, which I'd consider to be a good thing. I'm going to clean up and yeah, so consider that to be a successful refactor. Check that in. Say I moved the meetup code into a module. Okay. So I see a lot of duplicated code in this thing. So let's go ahead and see if we can fix that. So it looks like everything's the same except URLs. So again, because we've gotten all this code under test, we can confidently make this refactor, make web request. I'm not sure. So I'm going to pass in the URL. URL. Make web request URL. That's actually my error. See if that works. Okay. Let's say pry up the code. Okay. Now let's clean this up a little bit. Let's see. To string. That's necessary. The thing about having this code under test is I can actually see what what's going to happen if I maybe take code out or something like that. Nope, it will not work. Let's just try that refactor. I already know it's not going to work because I renamed some stuff here. What else did I break? Request. I'm still breaking it. It shouldn't matter. Response. You know what? I broke things and I can't even see how I broke them, so I'm just going to start over. Another good thing about having tested code. I'm going to call this URI, URL, URI, URI, smaller refactor. Okay, test still passed. Yep. minor thing, but I think the Ruby convention is if you have a block that takes more than one line, you use a do end. But if you want to have it as one line like this, then you use the curly braces. Definitely don't need a return statement. Ruby will return the last value. Itself. This is Rails again, making the test run slow. I think Ruby convention also is that if you have only one line like this, you can use a single character. Personal opinion of mine is that I don't like to abbreviate if I can avoid it. I don't want to use parentheses if I can avoid it. All right, let's see if that works. It did. Love to have my equal sign stuff line up. Drop that. I wonder if this might look better if I just had it here. So we're saying make a web request, and I see the request, I see the response, and I see that it parses it. Nope. Oh, I've got the URI used more than one place, so. Okay. Okay. Looks good to me. More. I can avoid that. Then I can be picky. Got a little light right here that turns green if the test passed, and it did. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a break on the refactoring. Okay, so I was able to test the controller, then I was able to use those tests to move the code out. I think I still have a slight problem now, and that's that I'm testing my meetup code through the controller. I say that if I make a change here, I actually have to run the welcome controller test to verify them. I don't like that, so I'm going to go ahead and take these tests, which happen to match exactly what I'm going to be testing for the for this new meetup client. I'm just going to move the file and make the changes. So let's try it out. I need to move it into a different directory too. So let me move it from controllers to models. Now I'm describing this new meetup client. Don't need that, and these controller calls. Oops. These are actually going to be calls against the new meetup client. And I'll actually be testing the result of them. So the result must equal that, and this will be a calendar. So will be number data. And what was that? All right, I use Command T in Vim, and I have to flush it every time I add a file, unfortunately. It was members, let me check it right. It was member, same said member data, members. It was calendar and pass total. Okay. Let's just run those tests, see what happens. I bet I'll have to make a fix or two, maybe. Oh, they passed. Okay, great. And because I've gone from a controller that was making all three calls at the same time, let's bring that up just to check that. So I had to stub all of these calls out because I was making all three calls with the same method. But now that I've broken out the tests, I bet I can even take this out. And just these web calls will be stubbed individually and it'll be fine, if I had to guess. Perfect. Moved the meetup test from the controller to the actual class making the class. I think I can clean this up a little bit too. Mainly here, say describe getting data from meetup. Instead of saying should pass the meetup data to the view, it should return the calendar data. It should return the member data. It should return the pass total. Running the test just to make sure I didn't break something there. Okay. I didn't. Do a little bit more cleanup. I think this period works better to start the second line and not on the end. Yep. Test. Okay, so but now I've introduced a new problem in that it's that I have a welcome controller that does not have tests. So let's test this thing. Now that the meetup stuff is isolated out, these tests become much more simple. So let's describe our new welcome controller. Let's describe the index action. What should happen? It should, again, let's bring this back out. It should return the calendar data as meetup. This is the cool thing where if you name things where actually they map, then you can see exactly where the problem is, like where the naming problem is. So it looks like we're passing calendar data as meetup, and even describing it in my test feels silly. So that would be something normally I'd fix later. But Now I'm going to ignore it, but I'm going to keep the awkwardness in the test so it will stick out a little bit. It should be controller instance eval. There's another way to get that value out, but I like instance eval. Yep, must be same as what? The calendar data, but what's that? I don't know what that is. So I love to use mocking in this sort of situation. I'm going to throw in my favorite mocking library, Mocha. Add that to my gem file. We'll install it. Okay, what Mocha lets me do is it lets me fake calls like meetup client.calendar. So do that, meetup client.calendar. Say stubs calendar, returns calendar, data. Let's run this test. Oh, let's say that change I made where I commented all that code out. So it is expecting that value to be set, but it's not. It's nil. Bring that back. Test passed. The same with the others. Also going to return the members to the view. I guess I should be more explicit in that. So members, and instead of calendar data, it's members. Even though there's a little bit of difference where I'm saying meetup members and it's members, I'm not going to be that picky. This test is probably going to fail because it's going to fail with the web mocking thing. This is the neat thing about webmock in that I accidentally left open the chance of a web call being made in my test, and it still blocked them. So I think I'm going to need this in the before filter. And I'll do it in a before here. Don't even need to worry about that. Numbers, subs, calendar. That should pass. Okay. And I have one more thing to watch. It's this one. Yes, totals. View. So fail, let's bring the code back. Okay. And let's run all of the tests just to make sure. Okay. We've made a number of changes to this code, but hopefully everything will still run. I'm going to say I brought back unit test to welcome controller. A lot of people might ask, why test the welcome controller like this? And look how many lines of code I have to test essentially 3 lines of code. The reason is that this controller could very possibly change in the future, and when it does, this is going to be very easy for me to test. Since all these details of the meetup stuff's isolated from the controller, I can have the controller focus on controller things. So let's actually try running this app. Seeing what happens. Migrations are pending. I do bundle install. I need to be, what is that? Rake db migrate. Okay. Did I set weblock up correctly? I don't think I should have to do that, but let's see. Looks like weblock was running on my local development drive, so it was or environment, so it was blocking the web calls from dev. All right, the website still works. Let's see if I get some meetup data. And I am. And let's see if we get our calendar. Yep, that popped up. So despite making a big change like that, we were able to make the changes safely, and everything worked at the end. And I'm just going to finish this with one little bit of cleanup. Remove unnecessary lines and push changes. Pop a pull request. Some changes. Suggest a video to describe them. And I could take this event. Okay, that's about as thorough as I can be right now. This was fun, and I'm going to go to bed. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.